I guess I can call this meeting to order. Bud 46, is Mr. Brian Yates available?
Looks like they're all sliding over now.
All sliding over. Y'all want to wait a little longer, or do you want to?
Is Brian on there?
I haven't heard.
Okay.
He's not on yet.
Okay.
I would recommend going ahead and getting started and just doing the roll call. He can catch up.
All right. I'll call the roll now. Mark Vonderow is present. Margie Podjalinsky,
Present.
Scott Custer,
Present.
Deidre Eklund. You're muted, Deidre.
Sorry, I had mute.
That's
Here.
better.
Hello, this is Brian.
Hello,
Okay.
Brian. I'm just finishing up the roll call, and I'm calling George Newman.
And I'm here.
All right. So the board is accounted for. Brian, if you want to read the disclaimer.
Okay, just briefly, again, this is the MUD 46 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, February the 17th, 2021. As in prior meetings, briefly going through the meeting procedures. The meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Next, we will continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, nay, or an abstention. Likewise, we will continue the practice. I'm sorry, we just went through that. So we do need to go ahead and finish up the roll call. We did the board of directors, so we need to move on now to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson,
Present.
Mike Mooney,
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois,
Present.
Jeannie Scott,
Present.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water on the line? If not, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly,
Present.
Chris Meeks,
Present.
Matt Corley,
Present.
Matt Bona. Anyone else from Woodlands Water, I'm sorry, from River Authority in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to MUD 46 consultants. Do we have any MUD 46 consultants in the meeting?
Jan Bartholomew with Baird.
And Adam Cohen with Baird.
This is Brian. I think we've got some folks with their phones that are, or their lines that are not on mute. We're hearing a lot of background noise. Okay, any other MUD 46 consultants on the line? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
Wilson McCoy.
Okay, welcome, Wilson. Any other members of the public in the meeting? All right, Maureen, anyone else, any other numbers that have not identified themselves?
There are no unidentified numbers.
Okay, that will complete the roll call. I'll hand it back over to Mark to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right. number one on the agenda is complete. Number two, comments from the public. Maureen, once again, you're showing no body called in.
Nope, nobody so far.
Okay, number three, consider adjustments. Mr. Mooney.
This is Mike. I have no adjustments this month.
Okay, all right, moving right along. Number 4 through number 9, consent agenda, all the way down. Let's see, wow. Where does it stop, guys? The consent agenda.
Through the wage rates,
Through the wage rates, that's what I'm going
through
down.
page 23. Yep.
Okay. All right,
I have one correction to the minutes,
okay,
and that is line 21, or item number 21. It says a motion carried with Director Gaynor abstaining, and that should say the motion carried unanimously.
okay,
Okay, that's for Shelley.
right.
And I have a question on a cost sheet.
Okay, George, go ahead.
Okay, I think that January was the first month where we have increased sewer rates. And what concerned me looking at the cost sheet was the bulk sewer purchases was $241,000. And the sewer revenue was only $220,000. So I was thinking that the new rates were supposed to be able to cover more than just the cost of sewer. And the concern I have is that if we're not careful, we may go through be way into late in the year before we realize we've overspent our budget.
The new rates that went into effect in January have to cover the cost. I'd have to look at it in detail, but we're charging a base plus more than what we're paying in wholesale expense, so they have to cover it going forward.
And the other comment I have on the new rates is on the back of the bill, it still shows the old rates.
Yes, George, this is Maureen. The printer has now had that corrected.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is Scott. Was there an action that was being taken to explore that sewer revenue versus bulk purchases?
This is Mark.
I'll be
Bonner.
happy to look into it. I don't have an answer today, but we know that the new rates that were adopted that went into effect in January are going to cover the expense. I mean,
Okay, that's my concern is that in January it didn't cover it, whether the billing receipts haven't happened yet. I don't know.
yeah, I'd have to look into that. That may be the case. It may not be, but I will be happy to look into it and report back.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we want to take 9 out? Yeah, or can 9 stay in on the consent agenda? Hello.
Yeah,
Leave
this
it
is,
in.
this is Scott. I don't think there was a motion to amend, so I think we can keep it in, right?
Okay,
But the minutes, I guess, would have to be voted on separately.
yes. All right, make a motion. Mark Monroe makes a motion to approve the minutes on the agenda item number 4, separate from the other ones on consent agenda. Need a second, please.
So you're making a motion to accept the minutes as modified.
Yes, as modified by George Newman. Yes, George, you're correct.
And I'll second that.
All right. Mark Vonderow votes aye. Deidre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Margie, how do you vote? Hello, Margie. Did Margie drop off?
She's muted.
Mute? Okay, I don't see her on the screen. We'll go on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you,
Okay,
Margie.
yeah. I don't know. I'm having a little trouble with my phone, but yes, I vote yes.
Okay. Scott, how do you vote?
Aye. Excuse me. Aye.
And George, how do you
Aye.
vote? Okay. All right. The consent agenda consisting of items 5 through 9. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda items number 5 through 9.
I'll make the motion, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Margie.
This is Scott. I'll second.
Okay, second by Scott. Mark Vonderow, aye. Deidre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Margie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
And George, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Number 10, review the information on the 6th and final grand accounting, page 24.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chris Meeks. I apologize, I will not be able to share my screen. I do not have power at the time, but the presentation I'm going to walk through is in your packet, I believe on page 24. As I'm going through this, if you have any questions, please stop me or hold them till the end, either way. What this presentation is a recap of the 6th and final accounting, and of course, the kind of give a little bit of background of what the 6th and final accounting was, as well as the interim accountings. But the 6th and final accounting was done in 2017, and it was for a 10-year period between 2017 and 2027. So since we're roughly almost halfway through it, I wanted just to bring it back up and give a brief recap. So moving to the next page, the title of this is History of the Interim Accounting. So the interim accounting has been around since 1983, and it's been a method to provide funding for future expansions of the water and wastewater systems. And basically, as the Woodlands was growing and developing out, this process allowed the collective MUDs to work together to fund the ongoing infrastructure needs for water and wastewater. So kind of how we would do that is the JPA at the time would work with the developer to determine what capacity, what growth is needed or is expected over a 5-year period. Each of the interim accountings were 5-year periods up until the last one, the 6th and final, which did from 2017 to 2027. And that's because the developer, Howard Hughes, said they expected the Woodlands to be fully developed in 2027. And so when the developer and Woodlands JPA would get together, they would then determine this is what the development is going to look like, generally speaking, land use is going to be. That information would be provided to the River Authority. We would evaluate the capacity needs based on that development. To assist in the evaluation of that development, we would standardize the development into a single family dwelling unit equivalent. And what that does is it takes what we consider a single family home of 2,000 square foot, and it says, okay, the mall has rough numbers, 10,000 square foot. That's going to be 5 SFDUEs. So each SFDUE, you can have one for water, one for wastewater. A water SFDUE is 430 gallons per day of capacity. The wastewater SFDUE is 400, the water is 430 gallons per day. The wastewater is 217 gallons per day of capacity. So if a MUD purchases one SFDUE for water and wastewater, that's what they receive. Once the evaluation was done of the capacity needs and the development, there was math, basically the cost of the development, SFDUEs are needed by the MUDs, then that would actually show what each of the MUDs were owed or owed to the River Authority to build that capacity. Moving to the next page, considerations and impacts reviewed. Excuse me. These are the main three things that we looked at: regulatory requirements, customer demand, and projected development. Those three things together gave us a pretty good look ahead on the 5-year horizon as far as anybody could tell on what was needed in the system and why. Next page is purpose of 6 and final accounting and path forward. This one has a little road that goes through it. The top 3 green billboards covered on the previous slides. The bottom 2 is what I'm going to focus on. So since it was a 6th and final accounting, what was decided is that going forward after the 6th, which includes any time period during the 6th, during that 2017 to 2027 period and beyond, Woodlands Water will monitor the land use in the woodlands. And by January 1st of each year, we'll give a report to the River Authority showing what's planned, what's been built, and basically just an account of the 6th and final accounting, the SFDUEs in the woodlands. Any additional capacity needs in the woodlands. So let's say a MUD purchased 10, but now they need 12 SFDUEs. That request is not going to be a collective approach by all of the MUDs. That additional capacity is the sole responsibility of that MUD. That is the main difference between the 6th and final accounting and every other interim accountings. Previously, there would be a collective effort. Going forward with the 6th, anything above 6th and final accounting SFDUEs purchased, acquired by just that MUD. Next page is items for consideration. The capacity is built and funded only for the potential growth identified in the 6th and final accounting, and of course, anything prior to that as well. Estuary has not built additional capacity in the woodlands, so we don't have another 2 million gallons of wastewater capability that we've kept on reserve in case a MUD needs it that we could sell. It's only whatever the MUDs have bought SFDUE wise, that's what the plants are there to handle. So to that effect, all the available capacity has been sold in the woodlands.
Wow.
So any additional request for capacity may trigger capital improvement needs by the MUD that's requesting the capacity. And just a point to point out is, the redevelopment in the woodlands is something that we're keeping an eye on, as well as Woodlands Water. The multifamily developments and vertical developments, whereas 80s and 90s, there was a lot of the woodlands spreading out. Now the woodlands is spreading up in a lot of cases, getting denser.
Right.
So the last slide is the 6th and final accounting projected demands in SFDUEs per MUD. This is a table that's from the 6th and final accounting. And what it's showing is each of the MUDs and the water SFDUEs and the wastewater SFDUEs that they've purchased. And if you take the water SFDUEs times 430, you'll get the water demand, the capacity that's been purchased. You take the wastewater times 217, you'll get the wastewater discharge, the wastewater capacity that's been purchased. But with all that being said, it's a brief recap. I am going to get the 6th and final accounting, the entire actual technical report that was handed out back in 2017. I'm going to get that in PDF and send that to Jim. If anybody would like a copy of it, I just ask that you can get it from Jim after I'm able to send it to him when I have power. Are there any questions I can answer?
Rich, you go ahead.
Sorry, George. This is Scott. I think a point of confusion for me is when we're talking about water demand, and what triggered it is when you said if we need to purchase above the SFDUE, that could trigger additional capital infrastructure and that the total water capacity was sold. Is that a groundwater comment only?
That is a groundwater comment. The surface water that comes in handles demand, and it's a good point that you bring up. When I'm talking demand, I'm speaking infrastructure. So I'm talking about how much water can actually flow through a pipe. So if additional capacity is needed, do I need to build a bigger pipe? So if an apartment building comes in with 1,000 units, and I have a 6-inch pipe that needs to go to a 12-inch pipe, that's more capacity. So it's the physical infrastructure that we're looking at.
This is Scott. Thank you. That answers my question.
Chris, this is George.
Yes, sir.
A few months ago, you came to us and talked about future capital needs. And what I'm wondering is, are you going to come back and, now that you've updated this sixth and final accounting, come back to us and tell us what your future charges are going to be to our MUD?
This is Chris Meeks again. I believe you're referring to the 10-year project plan. Is that correct?
Could be.
So we plan next month in March to bring the updated 10-year project plan to each of the MUDs. And the 10-year project plan lays out renewal of existing assets. And so it's the capital to replace an existing ground storage tank that's already there. What the sixth and final accounting does is it adds a brand new storage tank that has never been there before. And so to give a brief example, in the 10-year project plan is the replacement of a ground storage tank at Water Plant 2. It's been there for about 40 years at this point. And so that'll be in the 10-year project plan because that's an item that all the MUDs use, its existing capacity. The ongoing maintenance is paid for by all the MUDs. If another hospital goes in over by Methodist and I need another ground storage tank and MUD 39 requests the additional capacity, that new storage tank will be solely the responsibility of MUD 39, not collectively by all the MUDs. So 10-year project plan, existing assets maintaining. Sixth and final accounting is any new capacity assets.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions I can help and answer? All right, well, thank you.
All right. Let's see, number 11. Is that going to be Chris Meeks again?
Yes, sir. This is Chris Meeks again. Okay, so this information, this PowerPoint is in your packet as well, following the previous one I just gave. What I'd like to do is provide a high-level overview of the PowerPoint, answer maybe some of the questions, give some of the meat and potatoes, if you will. I can go through the presentation if you'd like me to, but I'd like to start with the high-level summary because may answer a lot of the questions. So let me back up and kind of start with how we got to consolidation. So last year, similar to what Mr. Newman was saying earlier, when we presented the 10-year project plan last year, it showed about $160 million of improvements needed in the city. So what we had done is we started meeting with the audit committee at their request to talk about how to finance the long-term.
This is Scott. Chris, forgive the interruption. Whoever's in control of the Zoom room, I think, can force a mute for everybody. There is a lot of background noise. I don't know if it's your line, Chris, or someone else's.
Not mine, sir.
If whoever's owning the room can just force mute, I think that would help here.
Thank you, sir. And so when we were meeting with the audit committee, we were talking about long-term financing of the project plan, the ongoing maintenance and renewal of the aging woodlands infrastructures. So what we had brought up was that The 10-year project plan is a snapshot of those 10 years, but the Woodlands assets collectively are reaching 50 years in some cases. The first one being wastewater plant 1. Wastewater plant 1 is about 45, 46 years old. And it's had improvements over the years. And so what we're looking at is based on the service life, expected service life of those assets and the current conditions, we're looking at replacing in its entirety wastewater plant 1 over about a 20-year period between basically 2021 and 2045. Estimated high end cost of that is, it's on one of the pages, is 210 to 274 million. Right after that, you're looking at wastewater plant 2 that's reaching 50 years of life, and we're going to look to go through the same renewal process, which is a 20-year renewal of that facility. And it's looking at 4 phases of improvements or renewal over a 5-year period apiece. With wastewater plant 2, using a 3% inflation, you're looking at roughly $270 to $350 million to renew that. So when we're talking these very large hundreds of millions of dollars, then that brings up the question that we presented to the audit committee originally, which was, is it more financially feasible to consolidate the facilities? When you consolidate the facilities, what you're looking at is, there's lots of different ways, but one we proposed is the expansion of wastewater plant 2. So you demolish wastewater plant 1, you expand wastewater plant 2 by the same capacity as wastewater plant 1. And then once that new facility is there, at some point, wastewater plant 2, give or take 2045, will need to be renewed as well. The second option was, and that cost without the renewal of wastewater plant 2 was 100 to 151 million. What you would want to do is renewing wastewater plant 2 would add another 270, 350 million. So you're looking at roughly 370 to 400, 500 million potentially for that option, using information in your packet. The other option that we presented was the conceptual consolidation of both facilities. So wastewater plant 1 goes away, wastewater plant 2 goes away. At the wastewater plant 2 site, we build a brand new facility, same capacity as wastewater plants 1 and 2 today. Cost of just that facility is roughly 200 to 300 million. Both of those options for consolidation do not include the numbers for the conveyance, taking the flow from wastewater plant 1 to wastewater plant 2. There's a lot of variables in there. It could be anywhere, rough ballpark, 100, 200 million. Could be less, could be more. So looking at these different options, presenting it to the audit committee multiple different times, more information, different information. The presentation in your packet's a slimmed down version. We had different slides on some aspects of it, but there's a lot of different ways you can look at this information, a lot of different ways people wanted to look at this information. So what we brought is a recommendation to go and conduct a consolidation feasibility study. The consolidation feasibility study would fine-tune and confirm if wastewater plant 1 is needing to be renewed over the 20-year period and at what time frame. We all know it needs to be renewed at some point, but is our judgment accurate based off of what we've seen? The same with wastewater plant 2, so that's the baseline. They would come in and say, okay, wastewater plant 1 and 2, expected renewal cost is this, here's your timeline. Then you'd move into consolidation. They would say, if you expand wastewater plant 2, this is your cost. This is the cost for renewal of wastewater plant 2 as well. If you build a brand new facility and demolish the other 2, this is the expected cost. This is expected timeline. Then the feasibility study would also look at the conveyance system, get some good rough numbers on that, and say, these are the ways you can transfer the flow from one facility to the next, and these are the estimated costs. The feasibility study cost estimated 500,000 to $1 million. Timeline of 12 months. Proposed to be paid for by the unallocated bond funds from the 2017 bond that was sold. Debt service is already included in the budget and paid for by wholesale water and sewer rates. So there's no charge back to any individual MUD for these items. The proposal on the consolidation study process going forward is we would like to take this to the March trustees to get approval to issue the request for qualifications. There's no dollars tied to that because we're giving a range of 500,000 to $1 million based off the different options that the MUDs say, yes, we'd like to look at this, we'd like to look at that. Once the RFQ is prepared, sent out, we work with the consultant for the scope, negotiate the contract. We bring back that contract and that cost to the trustees probably in the May to June timeframe. Trustees take a look at that. They say yes, no, whatever they say on the actual cost. It'll be a hard cost that will go to our board if the trustees approve it. That way it takes the range from 500,000 to $1 million, narrows it down and says, this is the exact dollar we're going for in the contract, and this is everything that's in the contract. Once the feasibility study is complete, if it is approved, then that is not a go, no-go area. In other words, this is only step one. This is the very limited, non-technical, financial only, does it make financial sense to go forward any further? If the trustees say, no, it doesn't make any sense, we go back to the plan that we have. Maybe a modified version of, replacing wastewater plant 1 with information we get from the feasibility study. If the trustees say, yes, we'd like to see more information, step 2 in this process is a lot more involved, a lot more money, a lot more time. We're talking a master plan. We're talking about $3 to $5 million in about 2 years. At that phase, you get a lot of community engagement. You start looking at technologies. You talk to a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of discussions, a lot of fine tuning of the numbers, the processes, and more importantly, what the public wants, what the public is willing to pay for, and the overall path forward. At the end of that step 2, if the trustees say, no, we don't want to go any further, we pick up on the plan we had, we have a little bit of catch up to do, then we go forward. So there are a couple options before we get to the point of actually signing on the paper to spend a few $100 million on renewal of assets. It's just at which point do the MUDs feel comfortable either saying yes or no either way. But in a nutshell, that's that. I can still go through the presentation if you'd like me to, or I can answer any questions, or we can do both of them.
All right, guys, what do y'all want? Chris, this is Mark Von der Rohe. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Wastewater treatment plant number 3. What is it about that little thing? That I don't hear anything about that anywhere.
That's a good point, sir. So this is Chris Meeks again. Wastewater plant 3 is a small facility. It's just under 1 million gallons a day. Replacement cost on that facility, 20 to 50 million, potentially small, if you will. There is always the option, which is one of the reasons it can be looked at in the feasibility study. That's once again for the range of the feasibility study. If wastewater plant 1 and 2 is consolidated, additional capacity could be added to account for wastewater plant 3 to be added once the service life and the condition shows that plant 3 needs to be renewed. The renewal of plant 3 is somewhere in the 2050 time frame. It's got a lot of life left in it.
Okay, I wasn't aware it had that much life.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, any questions, board members?
And just to recap or close out this agenda item, we do anticipate putting this back on the trustee agenda, hopefully in March, and trying to get the trustees to make a decision whether to go forward with the feasibility study or not. So if you have strong feelings one way or another, let your trustee know.
Chris, this is George. I have a couple of comments. I saw your presentation at the trustees meeting, and so I saw a lot more detail there. And I guess the comment I have is the methodology that you're following follows the same kind of methodology I saw for huge chemical plants. And so I think what y'all are doing is really neat, that you're following such a excellent engineering methodology.
Thank you, sir.
And this is Scott Custer question. Chris, I want to make sure I heard you correctly, because I think I heard some new data from you just now that wasn't
Okay.
in the trustee meeting. I think I'm not holding you to it, but I want to make sure I heard you correctly. I think you said the conveyance from 1 to 2 area, your ballpark is 100 to 200 million as a possibility. Again, I know you said could be lower, could be higher, but I think that's new data, right?
It is new data. I did not say to the trustees that information because I do not know what it is. And
Okay.
it's one of those, it could be 50 million, it could be 150, it could be 200 million. I don't want anybody to think that conveyance is going to be cheap or expensive, but if you think about it, any which way I try to route roughly, a little bit technical, but I have to account for about 25 million gallons a day coming from wastewater plant 1 going to wastewater plant 2. And so that's going to be a large pipe that I have to route from basically sawdust to research. So construction will be expensive, design will be expensive, and then land acquisition, if I can't use existing land, will be expensive. So it may be, if we can route it accordingly, it may be not as expensive, but if we can't, then it could be expensive. But that is the one big piece of the puzzle that is missing. And there is a slide or a page with some of the missing information, because that could, if it's another $200-300 million to route the flow from plant 1 to plant 2, that is a large cost.
Thank you. And this is Scott again, just for my fellow board members here. We did go through this in great length, as George knows, as he attended, and identified, really spent a lot of time trying to just compare the options at a high level, to at least understand the cost advantages and issues and risks associated with really the 3 options. The kind of status quo, just renew as you go, add on to work the treatment plant 2, but then renew the older infrastructure, and then really just redo everything. The redo everything had a significantly lower financial cost as of the trustee meeting last week, with the conveyance added in that kind of range. All 3 options, if it's in the $200 million range, all 3 of the options kind of get into the same ballpark cost wise. So that, and at least from my point of view in the meeting, just really understanding that and making sure that the really high level math was understood before we make a decision on feasibility study would be important. So I'm grateful for that new data. In my mental model right now, I'm kind of sizing them all as the same rough financial ballpark now.
And this is Chris Meeks, and that is, at the end of the day, that very well could be the case where they're all financially the same. Then you may start looking at items like, okay, if I'm going to, now one bit of information, all of these considerations are to replace as is. If there's any additional level of service, if there's reuse, if there's composting of sludge, if there's odor control, any of those additional costs would have to be added. So there could be the financial benefit where if you keep the plants like they are and you want to reuse out of both of them or do odor control out of both of them, you have twice as the cost. If you consolidate, maybe it's only, one of the cost, if you will. So there's some pros and cons, but that's more of the information to be discovered.
Thank you.
I guess I thought there was a part of the driving force was new technology that would allow you to build a plant that would be less smelly, for example. And I thought that was one of the main ideas that that was really driving you to do this.
And this is Chris Meeks. Odor control is not one of the driving force behind it. It just so happened that the consolidation and long-term planning came up at the same time that odor control was being discussed. it is a potential side effect, if you will, of, I mean, obviously a car built in the 70s doesn't have the emissions that a car built in 2020 does. And so there is the potential for new technology, different processes at a new facility to have lower odor emissions. Also, the way the plant is out or laid out and designed and actually constructed has a potential. So there's things like that that come with a new facility that you can't always do at the existing facilities, because the replacement of an existing facility while you're keeping it operating, to me, is a lot like heart surgery. I have to keep the plant alive while I remove some of the intricate parts of it and replace it right back where it was. So there is some capabilities and new technologies and facility layout that could reduce some items. It just depends on what the technology is and how it's laid out.
Hi, Chris. It's Deidre. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions.
Yep.
The engineer in me kind of has anxiety when I think about this, because it is a big task at hand to change those. It's big. But what I appreciate is the fact that you all are looking ahead and not just thinking within the parameters of let's just go in and take what we have and replace it and just continue that process. You're thinking about future planning. So I really appreciate that. Now, will permitting be taken into consideration? Because you're going to have to permit for a different facility location discharge at treatment plant 2. So I'm assuming you're going to take into account permitting and if you can actually get that permit from the state.
Yes, ma'am. That is one item that the feasibility study at this point will not take a look at because it's strictly financial, but the master plan, the longer study, as well as the PER phase will definitely take into account permitting. And for others, the concern is that wastewater plant 2 discharges into a creek, which goes into Lake Woodlands, which then goes into another creek over to Spring Creek. And so that flow coming from wastewater plant 2 is roughly 4 million gallons a day. If we consolidate the facilities, that flow may go up to about 8 million gallons a day. And what does that do to the hydraulics, the fish, the wildlife, and everything that the state is concerned with in that area of the creek? So that there are alternatives to the discharge. We could split the flow. It all comes with a cost, but permitting will definitely be looked at. It's not in the financial feasibility side of it.
Okay, so this first part is just how much will it cost for us to do this? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And just real quick, there is some limited potential community engagement. That is something that we will bring an option back to the trustees if they are interested.
Now, when we're looking at the financials of it, you can go big with this or you can just go standard plant now. So what kind of parameters will be set for somebody to go and evaluate this? Because you can do a plant and you can make it super, you can treat the odor and you can have everything enclosed. That's so much money. Or you can have it to where it's energy sufficient, self-sustaining energy wise. You can do that. So is there kind of a limit, or is it just going to be, what do I have to do basic, or is it going to be like basic in Cadillac or?
Yes, ma'am. I see what you're saying. And so what we're looking at right now is it's an apples to apples comparison, because that, to me, that'd be the only fair way to do it. If I value the existing plant's renewal and do that as is, but then on the new facility, I go with the Cadillac, it's not an apples to apples comparison. So what we're kicking around at this point, and mind you, this will be put in the RFQ, brought back to the trustees to go through, is basically replace wastewater plant 1. It's, let's just say, conventional treatment, right? At wastewater plant 1 as is. The new facility would also look at conventional treatment at wastewater plant 2. So same level of service, meeting the same permit, the whole nine. Then what we would ask the consultant to do is add what I'm going to call adders to the end of it. Is if you want odor control at the renew as you go, the baseline approach, it's plus 10% of the cost. If you want odor control at the new facility, it's plus 5% or 10% or 20% of the cost. And so that way you can have your apples to apples comparison of conventional treatment, baseline, conventional treatment, consolidated, and then you can get a rough idea of additional level of service, reuse, and those other items like that. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And the other thing that I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly is it's not as though you're losing redundancy in the wastewater system. You can't just shift the flow to go to treatment plant 2 that's going to treatment plant 1. Like, it's not that easy. You're going to have a large diameter, like you said, conveyance system going through the woodlands in such a way. I don't know if it's going to be under roads or what.
You are correct. Currently, because I have been asked that question before, if consolidating the facilities reduces redundancy, and you are correct, there is no redundancy. Wastewater plant 1 has almost flooded a couple times. Plant 3 has flooded. Plant 2 never has flooded. So if wastewater plant 1 gets flooded out, I can't just turn the flow and send it to wastewater plant 2 today. And so I don't have redundancy currently for any of the wastewater facilities, and so we'd stay a little bit status quo.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 12, received the attorney's report.
This is Brian. The only items I've been reporting to boards this week is that the legislative session, as expected, is moving incredibly slow with the combination of COVID, security concerns, and now weather-related issues. And also, there's news reports today that Governor Abbott is going to place ERCOT and electricity issues at the forefront of the session as well. So what was already shaping up to be a very slow session is likely to get bogged down more. So we'll keep you posted as, updates are available, but not much to report at this time from a legislative perspective. Also, as Jim reported last month, we are looking into the content policy for developer reimbursement agreements for construction of new infrastructure around the woodlands. Expect to have recommendations on any changes or updates to that policy that would be necessary in the coming months. That's all I have of a general nature to report to boards. I'm happy to answer questions if y'all have them.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? All right, let's go to agenda item number 13, the status of our recent refunding. Hello, Jan Bartholomew. How are you, ma'am? Hello, Adam Cohen.
Sorry, I had to get off mute. I'm doing great. How is everyone? I also have Adam on the phone, and I think he's going to go over the analysis. We received a request to show what impact the refunding had on the district's tax rate. And so, Adam, are you still on the line?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to let you kind of go over the analysis and sort of what we're going to call our preview to this until we get more definite information.
Okay, and this is Adam Cohen with Baird. First, I apologize for only getting you the cash flow this morning. I have not really had power at all through this fun Arctic blast, whatever you want to call it. But I did provide this morning a cash flow, which is what you typically see on your debt side of your outstanding debt service when it comes to tax rate time. Keeping in mind, tax rate time, when you look to levy your 2021 tax rate, it will be probably around August, September timeframe once we get the certified value from the appraisal district. We don't expect to get the January 1, 2021 preliminary value until probably around April. So that will give us a snapshot of what we're looking at from a taxable value standpoint. And then as well, you know, in the September timeframe, you'll be looking also at your M&O budget, which all encompass together with your M&O and your debt service equate to your overall tax rate. But just looking at the debt service side, since the impact of the refunding only affected your debt service side, I'll run through the columns really quickly and feel free to stop with any questions. The first column, the year ending, that's just the tax year ending, keeping in mind that you're collecting taxes in arrears. So that second line, year ending 2021, that is what you're collecting this year in taxes based on your 2020 certified value, which would be as of January 1. You can see that beginning fund balance in the next column. We used a July 31, 2020 fund balance. We pick a time frame prior to your levy because honestly, right now we're still collecting dollars, so we don't want to skew what the actual fund balance is. The next column, over the life of the bonds, we're assuming around a 1% earnings on your funds on hand. I know it's lower than that right now. We've seen over time that it averages out to about 1%. The next column is blank. The next column, refunding debt service fund transfer. In order to meet the ordinance with respect to the refunding, the district contributed $104,000 from your debt service account to the deal. And so that's where that deal is negative. That number is negative since it's a contribution to the transaction. The next column, you can see your prior year taxable value. The next column is just your AV growth year over year. You can see from 19 to 20, you grew about 1.1%. That next column is your debt service tax rate. Currently, you're levying 20 cents. And if you recall, when we showed you multiple scenarios back prior to the refunding, we showed the impact would be from 20 cents down to about 19.63 cents. But since the deal was a little bit stronger than expected, that went down to 19.5 cents. So realistically, it's about a half a penny impact to your overall debt service side of your tax levy. And that number may go up. The impact may be felt more when we see the taxable value for 2021 if that raises more than, say, 1% or whatever appreciation is. Your next column, tax collections, we assume 99% tax collections year over year. And then the next column is just your total funds available, which would be your fund balance plus any collections in any given year. The next column is it says current debt service. That was your debt service prior to the refunding transaction. Principal and interest, you owe about just over $81 million. You can see the refunded $21.6 million. And with the new transaction, added $19.3 million. So your total debt service went from $81 million down to $78.7 million. And then that second to right column is your ending fund balance year over year. And then all the way to the right is your debt service coverage. You can see how the coverage, although it shows 106% in that second line, it draws down over time down to 21%. And the only reason that 21% is red is anytime we go below 25%, we like to show it just to have it stand out. If you were to go to the TCEQ to look to sell future bonds, the TCEQ requires that we maintain a minimum coverage of 25% of your following year's debt service. So you're just slightly below that, although appreciation should account for that over the next year or two and get you to over 25%. But I'll pause there to answer any questions. But the bottom line is this is, like Jan said, kind of a snapshot right now. Until we get additional information with respect to the certified value and staff has a chance to look at the operating budget to determine, what would be necessary on the M&O side, and then what you could drop the debt service tax rate to on the debt side. That question and that analysis, I think, will be had later this year when the information is available. But I'll pause to answer any questions.
This is Scott. I just want to make sure I'm summarizing it correctly. I think it's pretty close to what you had said to expect, which was about $2.2 million in net debt service savings and about $220K a year, roughly. It looks like slightly more than that, so some good news. And then the original tax rate assumption was like 0.1972 maybe, and this is 0.195. I recognize that it's subject to additional analysis, but it looks like did a little bit better than originally expected. But did I say it correctly?
Yes, Scott, that is correct.
So our opportunity net, if we choose to, could be to reduce the tax rate by half a penny. Got it.
That is correct. Correct.
Any more questions on number 13 for Adam?
This is Brian. Adam, I may have missed it. You also mentioned that we were able to actually get this deal closed today. A number of challenges in Dallas with Bank of New York, but they did pull through and get this deal closed today.
Great point, Brian. I know I sent it in the email. I did not mention it, but yes, everything went well in the end, and the deal did close today.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Yeah. This is Scott. Thank you, Adam, and thanks to the staff for identifying the opportunity. Appreciate all your hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, item number 14, discuss potential reduction in district's 2021 tax rate. Comments?
And this
is Jan Bartholomew. I think we'll be in a position to do that, starting with when we get the preliminary estimates from the appraisal district, which historically has been April, May. So when we have that, we will provide those estimates to the board.
Yeah, and this is Scott. For the purpose of any public commentary, it might be just important for the record. I mean, I to articulate my point of view, which is, I'd love to see us consider a refund in terms of tax rate and reduction. I think that's a good reaction and habit and process that I'd like to see. So I just want to state that publicly.
I guess, Scott, I'm concerned that we're going to be struggling real hard to just make ends meet with the tax rate we have. You may be able to move tax savings from the debt service fund over to operations, but I expect that we're going to see more charges coming in from the SJRA that are going to wipe out that savings.
Well, once again, we got to get our crystal ball out and make some hard decisions. You're right, George.
That's my concern, and I'm hoping we aren't faced with a need to find more money.
I mean, what would that look like for an average taxpayer?
Depends on how you want to do the math. We've got 8,100 connections. You could make assumptions on based on the revenue cuts. It's not huge. I think you know, $40 to $50, something like that was my math. But I don't know how you'd model the average. That would have to be part of our analysis. You know, and depending on how you want to take that into consideration, it's either, hey, do you view little additive reductions as useful, or do we dismiss it based on not meeting a threshold of visible to the end user? It would be an interesting debate.
I think it would also come down to, you know, what they see every month is a water sewer rate. They see what they use. And so would that have a negative impact? Because if I see a 25% increase that I got $50 on my tax rate, I'm going to notice the 20% increase on my water bill first.
Yeah, this is Scott, which, by the way, they're going to be noticing as GRP goes up and surface water goes up and.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of that coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of increases coming, and I'm more erring on the side of being cautious right now.
This is Mark Vonderow. Cautious on the side of the tax rate going up, or cautious on the side of water rates going up, or caution on both?
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean,
well, the rates are going to go up, right? Our GRP rates are, you know, they're going up according to, you know, what were requested. But if I had to pick, I think I would be okay with paying $50 more a year in my taxes, just because honestly, I don't see that. You know, it just gets taken out of my mortgage, and I don't pay attention.
you can deduct it, possibly,
Yeah.
over a water bill going up. All right, I got you. I understand. Anything else on this topic? We've got some hard decisions to make, and as we get towards the end of the year, we'll put more into it, and we'll set a tax rate and a water rate just like we have done every year in the past. But we're going to have to start paying for our infrastructure. And we are the largest mud district in the Woodlands, and I think it's important that we lead, and we be a leader. And I think that when we talk about our long range capital improvement funding and all of that, we need to be at the table in those discussions on the one water board trustee. So Scott, you got your work cut out for you in that trustee's position. So anything else we want to talk about on agenda item number 14?
Just one comment to that, Mark. Thank you. Understand that. Please keep me informed of issues that you want me to address on behalf of the board. It goes for all of you, please. And if you see any deficiencies in my approach, I'd like to hear that as well. Thank you.
One comment for you, Scott, is you asked a lot of excellent questions on cost at that last meeting on the cost of these alternatives that Chris was presenting. And it brought out more questions from other people that led to a lot better understanding, I thought. So your questions were excellent.
Thank you.
And thank you, Scott. Keep up the good work. Agenda item number 14, SJRA Phase 2 Spring Creek Flood Control Dam Feasibility Study.
That would be me, Ron Kelly. As you may know, the Water Development Board approved our application on January the 28th. And we're currently working with the anticipated funding of partners to finalize an interlocal agreement, including MUDs 1, 7, 46, 60, and MUD 386. We are planning to take that interlocal agreement to our board no later than April, and anticipate taking the Water Development Board contract to our board in the summer, so that then a consultant contract could then follow sometime in the fall. So we're moving forward.
All right, sir. Any questions for Ron on that? No questions for Ron on that? All right, thank you, Ron. Number 16, General Manager. Hello there, Jim Stinson.
Thank you, sir. Deidre, I'm going to open my report with sharing with the board our discussion and your interest in the AWBD Emerging Leadership Program. I think this is extremely worthwhile, and I just can't tell you how impressed I am that Deidre is interested in joining that. So I'm going to be working with her to try to develop a path forward where she can get in that program, and we'll be reporting more next month back to the MUD 46 board. I'm going to run through some items from the trustee report quickly. We talked about MUD 60 Director and Trustee Bob Lux has been representing the Woodlands Water Agency at the Texas Water Conservation Association for a couple of years. He's been renominated to serve on that board and also on the utility district panel. And I think we are very fortunate to have Bob in that position. He brings back very detailed and excellent reports, and it is a great representative for Woodlands Water at that organization. So we're glad that he's interested in continuing that relationship. We did send out an email that included a press release and an executive summary from the Houston Advanced Research Center and the Science Advisory Committee that has completed their review of the Lone Star Groundwater District Phase 1 subsidence study. So I encourage you to look through that. I think they did identify some, for lack of a better term, shortcomings in that study. And we're looking forward to having a chance to give input at the Phase 2 subsidence study scope of work with Lone Star. I'll also report that I did receive an email from the GM over at the Lone Star board wanting to see if there was any interest in a couple of our trustees getting together with a couple of their board members to talk about issues. So we'll see how that plays out. I haven't had a chance to review that invite with President Hurd yet, but we'll see how that works out, and we'll be reporting more next month. I also reported that I've been working with 2 neighborhoods that have concerns about the poles that were installed that we're using to transfer the AMI signals from the meter upgrades. One neighborhood, and I think we may have put those in your packet. Scott had requested a map just to see where they are. One is around Water Plant 1, it's on Slash Pine, and the other is near the intersection of Woodlands Parkway and Kirkendall. So I'm looking at listening to their concerns, looking at what options may exist to address those concerns and be reporting back to the trustees and the MUDs in March or April.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
Is my understanding of the map correct that there's like 3 of those poles here in Sterling Ridge? One down at Terramont, one over there behind Walmart at the water plant off of Branch Crossing, and then one on Woodlands Parkway.
Did you get that out of the map that was in your packet?
I thought I did. I don't have it called up where I can see it real easy.
I thought the aerial photograph that we put in your packet.
It's on
Just-
page 59. It's on page 59. There's the map.
Yeah, there was actually two, I think one on 57 maybe, but it was just the two locations. We have others around the Woodlands, but I don't think I've included a map on those in this month's packet. I don't, that I recall. The one at Terramont Park has not been constructed. That's still in review and negotiations with the township. But George, I'm not saying we don't have towers there. I just don't know. I'm not, the areas that I'm meeting with residents is in the Slash Pine neighborhood, and then the name of the neighborhood right there by the Sterling Ridge Village Shopping Center. There's a water plant there, and they're back up to the water plant in the road, I mean, in the drainage ditch.
Okay.
But we do have, yeah, a number of poles that have been installed around the Woodlands, but these are the only two locations that I've had concerns from neighbors regarding the way it looks and the impact it might have on their home value or their view of the neighborhood. And then we did talk some more about the 10-man, how the preliminary engineering estimate went from about 130 to about 190, I think. We went, San Jacinto River Authority covered those details, and that project was approved to go forward in the engineering design, not the construction, just the engineering design at this point. And then Trustee Martin reported that he thinks that after the audits are in, looking at the numbers, that there's probably going to be a refund coming back to the MUDs from the operating reserve at the Woodlands Water Agency. If you remember, a few years back, we adopted a resolution that if the reserves exceed a certain threshold, that we make some refunds, rebates back to the MUDs. And his preliminary findings are that's probably going to be a rebate condition this year. And we'll talk about that more in March. And that concludes my report. Scott, I did get your email regarding suggestions on our press release. Just have been swamped. I haven't had a chance to respond to you, but good ideas I've forwarded on to our PR representative. And you had a question about flushing. Yeah, if a home is without water, if their water's been shut off either for a break, primarily for a break, or any other reason, once you get it back energized, you should consider flushing out the faucets and things till it runs clear, and make sure you do a good flushing before you start drinking it. And that concludes my report. I will tell you that I don't know, we're at 200, 300 requests to turn off meters at this point. It's a huge number. We had a horrible condition happen Sunday night and Monday. Our on-call emergency number service went down because of the weather. So we had to call on our staff to answer phones at home and deal with that. It's been a really tough situation over the last few days, but we're about got it under control. And Mike, any comments from your end?
This is Mike. That on-call service that we use handles a lot of the MUDs in this area, so they all had the same kind of problem. We're up to 455 calls already.
Wow, that's not bad. I wanted to just say that our neighbor, Wayne, that lives on the next street over, called yesterday, and they had the guys out there within an hour, 1 hour, to turn off the water. And he was very impressed with all your actions. So I wanted to give a big pat on the back from Wayne over in High Oaks.
This Mike, thank you. And that gentleman worked all through the night. A couple of the guys did. And then we sent them home about 8 o'clock this morning, and they're coming back tonight. The day crew filled in, so we've got it's a challenge, but we're doing our best.
Well, they were very impressed with the service. He was very impressed.
I wanted to add something to that. Jim, thank you for personally calling one of my neighbors and friends regarding her no power. I figured it was a situation of frozen pipes, but right now people are panicking. They're without water, they're without power. It's a big mess, but just to give kudos to all the staff of Woodlands Water and the SGRA for keeping our water system going, keeping our lines open and people having water, just regardless if they had frozen pipes. That's quite a feat. I know you guys have probably been under a lot of pressure. You've had a lot of late nights, but it is noticed, and the residents, when they know that you're out there, they're very appreciative. What I've been finding out is in a lot of these closed Facebook groups, they don't know where their water comes from. They don't, know who to ask. And so I tried to tell people to tag me in their posts when it comes to water and redirect them to you guys. There was a situation with brown water on Archwick. I don't know if you guys got that call. I know that they should just flush their line, let their water run. I didn't want to tell them to do that. I wanted to send it your way so that you'd be aware it's probably a dead end line. But we've had cities all around us and muds all around us that are going down left and right. Boil water notices just being issued. And how do you boil water if you don't have electricity? So it's just it's noticed and it's appreciated, and I just want to say thank you.
Deidre, this is Mike. Yeah, we did get that call from Archwick, and what we found, we did go over, there was a couple of backflows that had busted right around the corner that we thought maybe might have something to do with it. But you're right, that is the procedure, just to flush your lines. 5 or 10 minutes usually clears them up, and then the customer's happy.
And this is Scott and Deidre. I've noticed you answering questions in Sterling Ridge in particular, so thank you for doing that.
And just to give kudos to Ron and his Lake Conroe crowd, I know that I think they're working on becoming a point of potable water for emergency management operations in Montgomery County and the state of Texas. I had the CEO from St. Luke's Hospital call me needing water for their dialysis and other operations. And Ron, are y'all working that out to where you can be an emergency resource for potable water?
Yes, we are now officially listed on Texas Department of Emergency Management as a supplier, available supplier.
Hey, Ron, just heads up, we just loaded 2 trucks. So
good.
Yep. And are these 60,000 gallons each?
Yeah, 6,500 a piece.
So anyway, we're in a good spot here in the Woodlands, and the River Authority having that source, which is not, they first wanted to come and get it out of our distribution system, but Chris Meeks and Ron and I thought, well, why we don't want to jeopardize the pressure and the volume here. So that was a great resource to take them up and get it directly from the lake. Perfect situation.
This is Scott. I hope you make that known somehow, or tell us how to help you do that. That's an incredible service. Thank you.
And that concludes my report, unless y'all have some more questions.
Jim, sorry, this is Scott. If I could just make a comment, you referred to my email, and that was just asking. I was asking Jim for more information on the boiling water requirements, not if we're doing it, but because I've been made aware that there are a lot of people buying water in a panic fashion because of concern that they would have to boil. So I think your press release and the Woodlands Township echoing it helped. But I was asking Jim, just so everybody knows, on some follow-up details on why we think the other MUDs are saying to boil, so we could provide the extra level of assurance to our residents on why they don't need to boil. I was just hoping that a fact could be developed or something to get that word out as well, or at least allow us to tell people who ask us, why is our MUD different? So that was the additional data I was asking Jim for, so everybody knows.
And just from a preliminary look, it's going to be the reasons that others around us are having to boil water is a variety of reasons. There's not one. Well, the underlying reason is generally the pressure goes down below the threshold, but the reason that occurs can be a whole host of things that create that low pressure. And we'll see if we can come up with a way to give us some positive information, but without taking too much away from the others. I mean, it's a horrible situation that I don't want to. And the fact is, you know, gosh, God forbid, we could have a boil water notice here. I don't want to put out a note that said it won't happen, because it could, God forbid. But anyway, I'm going to take a closer look, Scott, and see what we can come up with.
And Scott, it's like Jim was saying, it's not just like a one answer solution. It's a variety. Pumps, pressure, just anything could require it.
Got it. But the key being pressure below a threshold is kind of the indicator. So you would have, Jim, I assume in your thermometer benchmarks or whatever, you would know, you know, like ERCOT or something, you have some diagnosis of where we are pressure wise and risk levels and all that you monitor somewhere, I assume. Is it true?
We do. Well,
yeah.
Chris Meeks' staff monitors that very closely and would report back to me any concerns they might have.
Thank you.
All right.
And I will tell you, he does say we're pumping a heck of a lot of. The demand is very high. We know people are running their faucets when they shouldn't. We know that they're having leaks that are uncontrolled, and so the demand is unusually high for a winter period when we know it's not irrigation. So it's kind of interesting. The demand is high, but not enough where we can't keep the pressure up above the threshold.
Yeah, and this
we'll have a lot of adjustments next month. I promise you.
Probably. And sure, yeah. And this is Scott regarding keeping sinks running. Jim, I probably don't have to tell you, if you poll contractors, half of them will tell you to trickle it, half of them will tell you don't bother. If Woodlands Water has a point of view on that, you might want to consider publishing that.
We have our point of view is insulate your pipes and don't run your water. If you're concerned about it, turn the water off and drain your pipes. But we do not promote running the pipes all night or running the water all night.
All right, Jim.
I'm pretty sure that's already been posted several times.
Okay, I may have missed that when I was down, so got it. Thank you.
All right. Number 17, Woodlands Water Trustees Report.
Yeah, super quick. The quick comments I would make. Number one, I just kind of always keep track of how many members of the public attend. By my count, there were 10. There were just a couple of people that gave public comment, though. There were no votes of any consequence other than the consent agenda. I was grateful that some of my commentary got us to review Tin Man, and I think next month we'll review a policy recommendation for when we review changes in costs or timing on projects like Tin Man. So thanks for that. As George mentioned, there was a lot of discussion on the wastewater treatment plant. I did ask a number of questions on that. Hopefully that is going to get us to a better level of granularity on the cost analysis. So we can make a decision on whether or not to go forward with that preliminary study next week. And as Jim mentioned, if you have any guidance for me, I'd appreciate hearing it. Aside from that, I don't think I'd add any value beyond what was already said here.
I thought it was nice that Shelley sent out a link, a Zoom link to that meeting, and also a link to the at least part of the packet.
Yeah, this is Scott. My observation when I get that packet, I have a link to that Zoom meeting. You're exactly right, which is different than my packet and our packet for this MUD 46 meeting, right? That is true.
This is Mark Monroe. Got a request, Scott. it would be nice if the public speakers would identify the mud district that they live in. Just, you know, you got 10 or 12 people speaking and like, well, where do you live? And where do you live? And over the years, I've been amazed at conversations that have come up and people couldn't tell you what mud district they lived in, but they had a concern or a complaint. So it would be nice if at the trustee level, if the public comment people would identify their districts that they live in. So that's just one of my little comments.
I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I got to take a bathroom break.
You poor guy.
What you call TMI.
One quick, Jim.
Hopefully we recorded that.
We had a resident talk about our winter averaging and how that's going to affect the pocketbook. And can we put that on the agenda for next month's meeting and discuss our winter averaging and see if we can't like use last year's average or whatever, but you got people with out of work and hardships and blah, 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 and all the rest. So if you can add
Yes,
that.
sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir. I only got 2 minutes. I'm
See you,
sorry.
James. I appreciate it.
Peace out. Yep. That covered, Scott, for you on 17?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, good deal. 18, we don't have anything there. Hughes Corporation's not here to poke fun at or talk to us about anything. So anything else we want to place on the future agendas other than let's talk about our winter averaging and maybe try to use last year's and help our residents out and see how that affects them. Once again, we're going to have some in the next couple of years, we're going to have some big decisions. I think that our board, we've got some good knowledge and good common sense and experience with Deidre, you're new, and Scott's new, and George, you completed your first term. And like I say, we've got some hard decisions to make, and we need to take care of our residents and make it a good quality and community to live in. We don't want to be known as a Flint, Michigan, and that would be a horror story. And we want to continue the good service that has been available since the inception of the Woodlands way back in the early 70s. So,
Mark, is there an extra meeting tomorrow?
I don't know. Shelley, are you still on the line?
I'm barely, but no, I haven't set it up yet. It'll probably likely be the first week in March.
Okay,
Before
that's
we can
fine.
get to it.
I just needed to check my calendar. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry about that.
That was a good question because I thought we were on.
Okay. Call me and we'll talk. I'll hold a meeting for you. Call me, George, and we'll talk about it. We'll have a practice meeting.
Yeah, just George, yeah.
Just George. Oh yeah, just George. Call me and we'll have a practice meeting.
There you go.
It'll be fun.
All right.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Anything else? All right, guys. I'll see y'all whenever I see you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe,
y'all.
everyone.